Many of us know the feeling. You spend years building an independent adult life, but the moment you sit down at your family's holiday dinner table, you revert to a teenage mindset, slipping back into old habits and past insecurities. For some, this regression is a completely fabricated identity, authored by their family and forced upon them as a survival mechanism. We see this in Ben, who splits his life fighting a mythologized persona constructed by his relatives, Attachment Ben. His family assigned this persona specific traits, labeling him a lazy liar and the family scapegoat. They treated him as their designated whipping dog. The actual reality of authentic Ben looked much different. Driven by a deep love for his siblings, he sold his personal belongings to afford the full-time care of his mother following a difficult divorce. Yet any time Ben tries to assert his true feelings, he is hit with an instant, dismissive, "Nuh-uh." The family rejects his lived experience because acknowledging it threatens the narrative they need Attachment Ben to play. When a family forces someone into a toxic role to absorb their unresolved pain, they erase the person standing in front of them. This identity fabrication began as a childhood trauma game, a coping mechanism kids use to establish hierarchy and find stability in a chaotic environment. The shift toward abuse happened during a simple car ride. Careless words recast Gen through an economic welfare lens, suddenly labeling the family caretaker a leech and a rat. The psychological mechanics behind this devaluation rely on a zero-sum mentality. As the rest of the family's economic status and self-esteem rose, they subconsciously required Ben to fall. The former golden child became the devalued scapegoat to keep their internal psychological ledger balanced. In this traumatized system, the inflated self-worth of one member is subsidized by the systemic devaluation of another. Maintaining this dynamic requires active enforcement, which Ben experienced most clearly during a group gathering at the Christmas cabins. There, he faced a series of covert abuses. He received coordinated cold shoulders, faced mockery over physical ailments, and was secretly branded a liar. The family believed they held absolute authorship over Ben's identity, fracturing his reality to fit their needs. By projecting their pain onto him, they harvest trauma supply. Publicly shaming the scapegoat acts as a release valve that temporarily soothes their own unhealed wounds. Enablers in the room smoothed things over with a false, "she's just kidding," while the group's collective silence rewrote the history of the event to protect the abusers. Ignoring covert abuse to keep the peace doesn't prevent conflict, it institutionalizes the psychological destruction of the scapegoat. Authentic Ben realized that remaining in the family dynamic required accepting the permanent death of his true self. He chose to step away entirely. Ben's choice to go no contact functions as a mandatory psychological boundary, a requirement for his own survival. He acknowledges the family's trauma responses as unintentional, yet chooses to stop volunteering as the target for their rage. He left his sibling with an ultimatum anchored in a single, direct question. Were you cruel at the cabins? This question tests for mutual reality. Admitting to the cruelty of that weekend dismantles the attachment persona, establishing a baseline of objective truth. Without this shared baseline, the co-op mode Ben envisions remains out of reach. There is no common ground. By walking away from a fictionalized version of himself, Ben is attempting to force a choice: remain in the safety of a shared delusion, or acknowledge the truth so a real relationship can actually begin.